I want to make sure everybody knows. We appreciate you. What could happen?
Invite more.
All right, everyone. Well, welcome to the Thursday, September 28th, the Clean Energy Board meeting. Appreciate everybody coming over here. We're going to call the meeting to order, roll call, and we're going to see if there's any teleconference participation under AB 249. Nellie.
When I state your jurisdiction, or when I call your jurisdiction, you please state your name. San Mateo County.
Dave Pine.
San Mateo County. Atherton. Belmont. Brisbane.
Colleen Macken.
Burlingame. Colma.
Oh.
Daly City. East Palo Alto. Foster City.
Sam Handy.
Half Moon Bay.
Harvey Rohrback.
Hillsborough.
Leslie Ragsdale.
Los Banos.
Paul Yanis.
Menlo Park. Millbrae. Christina.
Haggard Jethro fixed it.
Portola Valley.
Craig Taylor.
Redwood City.
Jimmy.
San Bruno.
Marty Medina.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Adam Moran.
South San Francisco. Woodside. And we have a forum.
Fantastic. Do we have any teleconference participation, Nellie, from AB 2449?
No.
Great, okay. And we will go ahead and open, you wanna open it up to public comment first? Is that right? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and open it up to public comment. Anyone that's participating either here or online that has, something that they would like to discuss or present on, they'll have 2 minutes. Something that is not on the agenda tonight. And of course, due to the Brown Act, we cannot respond, but we'll take it under consideration for future discussion. Go ahead, Nellie, anyone?
Anyone has any comments, please
Anyone
raise
here?
your hand.
Okay, Corey? Online? No?
No, right?
Very fantastic. We will dispense with public comment. We'll need an action to set the agenda and to approve the consent agenda items.
So.
Thank you very much. We have a motion by Marty and as first names are okay, everybody, second by Carlos. Do we need a roll call vote or can we just do that? We need a roll call
I
vote.
think we do
Nellie?
need a roll call vote.
Okay, great. We'll take a roll call vote. Nellie?
Right, San Mateo County.
Yes.
San Mateo County. Atherton. Belmont. Brisbane.
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Colma.
Yes.
Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Yes.
Foster City.
Yes.
Half Moon Bay.
Yes.
Hillsborough.
Yes.
Los Banos.
Yes.
Menlo Park.
Yes.
Millbrae. Pacifica.
Yes.
Portola Valley.
Yes.
Redwood City. San Bruno.
Yes.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Yes.
South San Francisco. And Woodside.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Fantastic, all right. Item number 2 is chair report. I'm standing in for Chair DeGolia tonight. He is he's out of town traveling and everybody is allowed an occasional vacation. I don't really have anything to report. Most of mine is rolled up with Sean, other than I really just wanna thank the our subcommittee that's been working on the surplus funds. I'm not gonna talk much about what happened there, that's all gonna come later. But I really just wanna thank everyone for attending the meeting. Everyone's come, no one's missed any. Everybody's really participating. There've been a lot of great ideas. Staff's doing a wonderful job. And I just wanna commend you, Sean, and staff for all that hard work. Because it's not easy herding so many ideas and great things to think about, and you guys are doing a wonderful job. So you'll hear more on that later. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Sean, for, unless there's anyone who has public comment on that. Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 3, CEO report.
CEO report. Well, I'll just kick off by saying thank you for the accolades, and that has to be shared with the team that is working on this, so thank you. So the topics for tonight, we'll just do a quick summary. We can move into the slides here. So I do want to let you know that we have had 2 surplus funds committee meetings this month with very good progress, as noted, and we are now through sort of the discussion around the various options on the table. It's a combination of what's likely to be a rebate of some sort, and then support for additional programs that could scale to further benefit our various programs, including electrification, and in support of some of the changes that are coming down. So our next steps as staff are to put it all together in a spreadsheet with some kind of evaluative criteria, send it back out to the committee. I'm confident that our next meeting, we should be able to get there in terms of a set of recommendations from the committee that'll go forward to the board. So that'll happen at your November set of meetings, and it'll stop at the CAC first on the 2nd, then go to XCOM, then to the full board at the board retreat. So that'll hopefully be an action item. And I do also want to appreciate committee members who've really been into it, have shown up and really provided great suggestions, so I appreciate that. Next slide, please. You all might remember that we, for the first time, had kicked off a summer intern program, and we kind of went from 0 to 110 this year. We didn't start with just 1 or 2, we went to 7, without actually fully realizing the impact it would have on our HR and our IT team. So we have to acknowledge that. And they just went into full overdrive to get everybody provisioned with laptops and set up and security and all that. So I do want to just thank this group of outstanding students that we had over the summer. They helped in a couple different departments. In the programs department, working on electric vehicles. We had a couple in the power resources department, especially in the data area. We had a person from Stanford working with us on the DEAI initiative. And then you can see there, and I will also say that 3 of them wanted to continue on with us. So one of them, Lauren, will be finishing up her project for us at the end of October. And the other 2 who are working with Moya and Power Resources will stay with us through the end of December. So we really feel like for our first effort, it went extremely well, a good win-win for the students as well, and we will plan to repeat it next year. So thank you to all of our great interns and the managers who managed and put the programs together for them. Next slide.
Sean, can I just say something about this?
Yes, please.
So anybody else can comment on this too, but I really just appreciate the diversity of schools that are up there. Public schools, private schools, schools in California, schools out of California, UCs. It's hard to find such a group, such a group of diverse students. And I also just want to say, when the staff puts this together, I posted it on my LinkedIn, and I know that at least one of these people came through my LinkedIn. So, don't underestimate the ability to post on your own social media. And I didn't even know, I ran into her mother one day walking down the street, and she pulled me aside and she said, my daughter's working for Pinnacle Clean Energy because you posted it, thank you. So please work with our group, because I think it's how we'll get kids from all throughout the county as well. It's by all of us advertising it to our constituents, so.
We did also get someone through Jeff Alps. So that's another example of a board solicitation. So really great, and I think everyone was pleased with the results and the projects that these students helped bring forward. Okay, next slide. I just do want to let you all know, I think many of you knew that last week our team went for a day and a half to Costa Noa, which is a kind of a glamping place on the coast in Pescadero. What an amazing spot it turned out to be for our group. Just the right spot. It's like an eco resort. It's not fancy, don't And we just covered everything from, you know, what a potential future could look like, what alternate futures might look like, kind of systems within our own agency, and now that we're a remote first work environment, what do we need to improve on, what do people need? And then really, I would say that the best of all was just the knitting together of the great group of people, hi, Anders, how are you? The great group of people that we know we have, but so many, 50% of our staff has joined since COVID. And so it's really a pretty new group, young group and fantastic group. So this is our staff picture playground. We didn't spend a lot of time there, but it was a good spot at the end. And I do want to just acknowledge, we have an organizational development team that's a coalition of the willing, the people who raise their hands. So I do want to acknowledge Blake. I want to acknowledge Justin, Brianna, Wen, and Nellie. Thank you guys for putting together such a great retreat, and we hope to do it again. It's well worth the time. Next slide. So then just a couple days ago, got back yesterday, I went to Sonoma, to Santa Rosa, to the offices of Sonoma Clean Power, and we had a CCA board retreat, which was excellent. It's my first one to attend. And I do want to share with you the little highlights of what was discussed over the 2-day retreat. The first day we had key leadership from the PUC, the CEC, HISO, Elliot Mainzer, who we've discussed before in the regionalization. And we have also a senior representative from the governor's office, who all came to let us know what their current priorities are and to talk to us about what ours are. So it was a productive exchange. Unfortunately, I don't think it changes anything overnight. We all know that's kind of how that goes, but again, it was really good to just sort of have some truth telling and understand. So I do want to share with you what the priorities are that they've laid out. The first is reliability. The governor, that is his #1 issue right now, is keeping the lights on and making sure that we have enough power on the grid to make it through heat events. Everyone talks about September 6th of last year and how close we came to a major meltdown on the grid. So that's really, everything else sort of pales in comparison. So I do want to acknowledge our team and the decision this board has made for us to continue to comply with resource adequacy requirements. That is directly related to reliability, whether we like it or not. And I think we're doing the right thing by really pushing and staying in compliance. And Jeff Wright on our team is a magician. Somehow he makes it happen to get our monthly requirements filled. Safety is the next one. So in the wake of all the wildfires, there's a huge emphasis on undergrounding our grid and our power lines, transmission, as well as distribution. That's a good thing. On the other hand, it's a bad thing, because what it means is that resource and just sort of human attention has shifted to that and really is having a direct effect on interconnection, transmission, delays, and all the stuff that trickles down and affects us in terms of project delays and start date delays. So we had a good chat about that. PG&E, as you all may be aware, they're putting in huge amount of money, and I don't know the amount, but it's like a 10-year horizon. And so it's a little bit nerve-wracking to try and understand how they're going to catch up on the whole interconnection issue.
Was there any discussion about when you talk about undergrounding, because I'm starting to read things that the transmission is not going underground, that it's shifting back to above ground with those giant circuit breakers?
We did not talk about that.
Okay, I was
That's
just
technical,
curious.
but we
whether that came up.
Yeah, it was mostly just about the shift in resources and attention and what then doesn't get done. And, you know, there were some examples shared around the table of affordable housing projects in Sonoma that are ready to go. They're ready for occupancy, and PG&E is now saying it's 1 to 2 years before they're gonna be able to interconnect and flip the switch while these people are waiting and somebody else has carrying costs. So, you know, there were some very specific examples of how it's affecting local resource, local needs. And it's, you know, it's something that we're watching closely,
Is it just electrical?
yes.
Only electrical?
I don't, so we talk about electric, because that's what the business we're in, we didn't talk much about gas.
Yeah.
Compliance goes with reliability. And then the fourth, which is not too bad, but it's affordability. So affordability has sort of fallen down the list over the years. And yet, I did share that in our customer surveys, affordability is now number one. And what you don't see here anymore is GHG reductions, environmental concerns, you know, that it's a shift in what the industry is paying attention to. And our issues that we talk about, bless you, are the income graduated rates that are coming here in the next couple of years. We'll see what happens with that. And just anticipated rate increases. And a discussion the second day on cost of service, which is something that our board will be discussing in a couple of months when we have all of our data in. So the first day was kind of like a powerhouse day and really good information. The second day was for all the CCAs to talk operationally and across agencies about what's working, what's needed. We did talk a lot about the project delays, MTR, which is midterm reliability. It's kind of a little sister to RA. And that's gonna be the next thing, because when these projects get delayed, we're not able to meet our MTR requirements anymore than our RA. So it was overall a great meeting. I will say the highlight was visiting Sonoma Clean Power's Advanced Energy Center and their office, which they retrofitted kind of from the ground up. It's set up to be kind of its own microgrid and turn over to the Office of Emergency Services in the event of a major power outage. It has, you know, sort of a triple bottom line, which is very inspiring. So we may take a trip with the board up there just to check it out. It's great. So next slide, thanks for listening to all that. Okay, did want to just let you know that we are moving ahead nicely with the COO and CFO interviews. The directors will be meeting with 2 candidates in the CFO camp and 4 from the COO. They're going to be meeting on Monday and I think Wednesday of next week in a panel format. And then hopefully we're engaging a couple of our board members to work with me on when the finalists come about. And the goal is to have folks identified, hired, and in the seat in time for the board retreat in November. That will be an important one for them to be with us and learn. And then we've got a couple of other positions posted and are moving along there as well. Almost done. Next slide. Our meetings coming up. And because next Monday is a
Indigenous.
thank you. We are not meeting then. We'll go to the next Monday on the 16th. And I believe that concludes my slides. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, does anyone have questions of Sean? Sam?
Thank you, Shauna, for the report. Found it interesting and really exciting that you have so much interest from the interns, getting that number, and even more so by having some interest in continuing with PCE. So that's really great recruiting tool in a way, and you get to see those folks in action. Question, do they get any compensation while they're interning?
Yes. I believe that the undergrads got 25 an hour, and it was for 10 weeks. And then the graduate students got 35 an hour, and they were different scopes of work.
Excellent, thank you.
Fantastic. Other questions? Okay, so the only thing I've got on here, Sean, and then we'll go to public comment is, so it looks like we're gonna have maybe 3 field trips to plan for next year. So Merced, Los Banos, Sonoma, and then maybe the Kaisa. So maybe now is a good time to start thinking about it for 24?
Yes, and I think for Merced, Los Banos, we want to link that up to some kind of a ribbon cutting or you know,
Yep.
going to check out, right, solar and.
Yeah, but I think all of us our calendars get so busy that it would be
Okay.
great if we could get maybe lots of the planned for next year.
Okay, very good.
I mean, we could do something between now and the end of the year too, so
Maybe one of the,
probably not Merced Los Banos in the middle of the summer, but if we could, that would be a good winter. Yeah, right, Paul?
trade missions, we're gonna call them those.
Yeah, trade mission. I also think, yeah, it's really important, and as we wrap up our surplus
Yep.
discussion, Los Banos becomes important. Okay, does anyone have, are there any, yes, do I have another?
Sorry, one more thing that's not on here, but Colleen, I'll ask you to weigh in.
Oh, yeah.
Staff went into overtime. We got an outreach not too long ago, I think it was about 10 days ago, from the Clean Air Coalition and MCE and a couple of other CCAs that are hosting events to commemorate Clean Air Day, which is the 4th, next Wednesday. And it just happened to coincide with the completion of the GovPV solar project in Brisbane at the Mission Blue Center. And so Gwen and team and Raphael and team worked with the city. They're gonna do a ribbon cutting. There's going to be a press conference. I believe you're speaking. And it just turns into a great win in advance of Clean Air Day to kind of drum up interest and also celebrate the new project. That's there.
I think the speaking will acquiesce mostly to the mayor because she knows how I will just go on and on and on about this. And they already know that. It's gonna be hard to restrain the gushing because I've been preaching it so much so that the setting is beautiful. Hoping for the best weather. It's really an ideal time and location to showcase what's been done there and what's going to be done everywhere else.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
I'm
very much.
very excited. No, thank you.
It's a great partnership and we want to do more of them. So when your solar installations come up and are completed, we are happy to partner with your city to do ribbon cuttings and generate some press and get a story out of it. Thank you, Colleen, for being
No,
with us.
thank you. And thanks to Gwen, I know she had a part in that as well.
Yeah.
And I've been beating the drum. We need to get more visible. So that was
I know
really
Mark
good.
likes it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Nellie, do we have any members of the public who would like to comment on the CEO report or any items in it?
No answers.
All right, okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the Citizens Advisory Committee report. Who do we have here today? Cheryl?
Yes,
Okay,
I
great.
am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, perfect. Well, thank you. The CAC met Thursday, September 14th, and Mark Hirschman, who you all know, introduced PCE's regulatory and legislative policy platform. He also shared important legislative issues, challenges, and opportunities. Michael Clausen, one of our members, highlighted SB 49 that would support renewable energy development along highways. I asked about legislation that may help advance PCE goals, and Mark told us about recent bills that address power reliability and connecting power resources to the grid. Gwen Rose, Director of Marketing and Community Relations, presented insights about PCE customers from the annual perception survey and other research. She shared findings about customer awareness of PCE, customer perceptions of electronic appliances and EVs, and marketing priorities. We had a lively discussion. Jason Mendelson, Vice Chair, noted that he's seen customers incorrectly attribute rising energy costs to PCE. Robert Whitehair, committee member, highlighted the importance of publicizing cases where electrification of appliances lowers energy bills. Kathleen Goforth, member, was surprised that maintenance cost was a prominent perceived barrier to buying used EVs. She recommended more public education about the actually lower maintenance costs of EVs. Diane Bailey, member, asked about the all-electric living marketing campaign that we had heard about earlier. Gwen said PCE is developing a more targeted campaign focused on home electrification that's relevant to specific audiences. Jason Mendelson emphasized the value of broadly marketing the benefits of electric appliances, since PCE's plan for a direct install program will address many perceived barriers to home electrification. Gail Lee new committee member, described seeing a lawn sign announcing that the homeowner had installed a heat pump. She explained that signs are effective in influencing neighbors' adoption of electric appliances and suggested offering signs to rebate participants. Shreya Sudhar, committee member, asked if PCE had explored co-marketing point-of-sale opportunities with electric appliance retailers. Gwen agreed partnering with retailers is important and said that it likely will be led by the programs team. In working group reports, Shreyas shared that the Building Electrification Programs Group received an overview of PCE's residential energy programs, including participation trends and changes to rebate dollar amounts. Representing the EV Managed Charging Program Group, Jason discussed recruitment status for the managed charging pilot and was enthusiastic about research conducted through the pilot. Several committee members offered brief reports. Gail Lee suggested promoting Bay Area Sun Shares, a program that pools residents' buying power and negotiates discounts with pre-vetted installers. Desiree Thayer, committee member, said that the Youth Climate Ambassadors program application deadline was extended. Robert Whitehair encouraged committee members to review a recent report outlining decarbonization strategies for the city of San Mateo. It's called Electrify San Mateo and can be found easily on the city's website. Kathleen Goforth announced upcoming workshops on home electrification in Half Moon Bay and Redwood City. So this completes my report of our meeting. What questions may I answer?
Any questions? Any?
Not a question, but
Yes.
just a comment
Yes,
that the electrification workshop at the senior center was very successful. The room was full. I think a lot of people learned about how advantageous it is to take advantage of the rebates and financing that's available for electrification. There were a lot of people who spoke about the advantages that they enjoyed when they electrified it. So it's very successful.
Great news, thank you.
Sure.
Any other commentary on the CAC or question or no? Okay. Are there any members of the public who would like to ask a question or have a comment on this Community Advisory Committee's report? Any? Okay, thanks, Nellie. All right. Thank you, Cheryl, so much for that great report and the great work you all are doing. Appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 5, which is approval of a $524,500 contract extension with Clear Result to provide technical assistance services in the EV Ready program. Sean?
And this conversation will be led by Philip, I believe, isn't it?
All right, Phil.
Thank you, Philip.
All right, good evening, directors. My name is Phil Kovernick. I'm the Senior Transportation Programs Manager here at PC. Now I'm sending you my communication for a clicker.
Oh, yeah,
I have one.
great.
Look at that, there it goes. I oversee all of our EV programs, and tonight we'll be talking about EV Ready, which is our flagship EV charging program. So on the agenda for tonight, I'll be giving an update on our EV Ready program. We have some exciting updates and some fun metrics to discuss. And then the contract extension for Clear Result, which is providing technical assistance services in the EV Ready program. There is an action item for your approval tonight, and that is for that contract extension with Clear Result, which will add an additional 3 years to the contract at about $500,000 in total value to bring that contract total to about $2.5 million. And again, this is for technical assistance services in the EV Ready program. Okay, folks, sorry if this is difficult to read. This is an overview of our programs portfolio that we're offering. We have 3 major focus areas: building electrification, transportation electrification, and distributed energy resources. And I oversee all of our EV programs, and today we'll be talking about our charging program, which is called EV. Okay, so our EV Ready program is helping the community install EV charging. And we're doing that through a major investment that Peninsula Clean Energy has made in this space. And that includes $2 million for technical assistance, $12 million in incentives to help folks pay for EV charging to put it in. And that 12 million was also matched by the California Energy Commission through the Cal EVIC program for fast charging. So the pool is quite large in terms of what's going into EV charging. And then $1 million for a workforce development program. This hasn't started yet. We're working on developing it for the future. There's broad eligibility for our EV Ready program. Eligible properties include multifamily housing, affordable multifamily housing, workplace or light duty fleet charging, and public access charging. And this is both for new builds and retrofits at existing buildings. And now that we have lots of chargers installed, sprinkling this presentation with real photos from real chargers that Peninsula Clean Energy has helped to design and install in our program. The picture on the left here is from the new San Mateo County Garage in Redwood City, where we helped to install over 100 charging stations. And then some new chargers at the Burlingame Community Center on the photo on the right there. So there's two major components to our EV Ready program. The first is free but optional technical assistance, again provided by ClearResult. And the second are our incentives, which range from $1,000 to $5,500 per charger. And that depends on the charging type and property type. And I'll get a little bit more into those details in a second. And these incentives cover a few different types of EV charging infrastructure. We cover high and low power outlets, which are a cost-effective way of providing charging. Level 2 charging stations. These are the charging stations. We have a few out front that you may have seen here. Those are also covered in our program. Well, what we call make-ready spaces, which encourage folks to future-proof even more than they're installing to get ready for the future. And then also panel updates. And on the right is a photo of our largest multifamily project. This was 32 level 1 chargers at a rental apartment in Belmont. But that will soon be eclipsed by a project that's installing 63 level 1 chargers and will be done in the next few weeks. So the strategy that we're using in our EV Ready program, I refer to it as right sizing or right speeding. And this really allows us to put in charging at lower costs and really importantly, avoid service upgrades from PG&E whenever possible. And what this means, what right sizing or right speeding means, is matching the EV charging type to the use case that the property is using. And for multifamily, this is low power charging overnight. So most folks only drive between 25 and 35 miles per day. And we've done some research here that shows 94% of folks with their daily driving needs and how long they keep their cars parked overnight, really, they only need 1.65 kilowatts of charging capacity to satisfy their daily charging needs. So what this means in practice is that we focus a lot, especially for multifamily, on level 1 charging, which is a dedicated 20 amp circuit providing 1.9 kilowatts or 40 to 50 miles plus of recharge miles overnight, depending on how efficient your EV is, or power managed level 2. So level 2 chargers that do load balancing that allow you to put in many more chargers at the same capacity restriction. And on the right are two photos, again, from our program. The top is smart level 1 outlets. These are level 1 chargers that have access or billing controls, so properties can control who uses them and recoup a fee for that. And the bottom are power managed level 2 chargers, both very cost-effective projects. So here are some exciting metrics from our EV Ready program, which is really providing affordable EV charging, especially for underserved communities. And what I mean here are folks that live in multifamily housing, which have really been underserved with access to EV charging. So we have over 500 chargers installed now. We'll be at 600 very shortly. Our average project cost is $3,500 per charger installed. That's an all-in cost. It's 5 times less than PG&E's average. So another way of saying that is we're putting in 5 times more charging at the same cost as PG&E. We have nearly 3,000 charging ports in progress. And really importantly, the technical assistance that we're providing is doubling the number of EV chargers per site. So a customer will come to us, say they want a few chargers, we'll receive technical assistance and then put in 2 times more on average from what they were initially requesting. And for multifamily housing, that number is even greater. The average is 2.5 times more for multifamily. So really getting folks to go bigger through the strategy that we're using. All right, so some really important metrics here, again, for serving underserved communities, folks that live in apartments and condo properties. Over half of the chargers that we've installed in EV Ready are at apartment and condo sites. And over 60% of projects in our technical assistance pipeline, so folks receiving design assistance from us, are apartment and condo sites. This is much, much higher than other similar programs like Cal EVIP or EV Charge Network. So really, our program is mostly focusing on multifamily housing, which has been a historically pretty hard, a hard place to provide charging. And our strategy is getting noticed and taking off in other programs. So the right speeding approach that we're using has now been emulated by other programs like Silicon Valley Clean Energy's Future Fit Assist program, the CEC's REACH program, PG&E's multifamily and small business direct install pilot, and Level 1 charging has recently made an appearance in CalGreen state building codes for a proposed charging type in the next code cycle. So switching gears to talk about the ClearResult contract extension. So again, ClearResult is offering no cost technical assistance to customers in our EV Ready program. Customers receive a few things when they are getting technical assistance from us. They get education on charging options, electrical load assessment, recommended charging and design options, ADA guidance when that's relevant, negotiated pricing for EV chargers. We have a discount for several chargers, and optional contract referrals if folks want to do that. And the picture on the right is an example of a charging evaluation. This is the key deliverable that customers get when they receive technical assistance from us, outlining how many, what types, where they can put in charging. And here are the details of the contract that we have with ClearResult. So the current contract is a 4-year contract, $2 million in total, ending this December. The 3 core components are some admin and marketing expenses, charging evaluations, again, that deliverable that customers receive in technical assistance, and then also a performance incentive when chargers are installed. The proposed extension will add a little over $500,000 in 3 years, making this a 7-year contract worth about $2.5 million going through December of 2026. We've also made some modifications to some of the structure, really in the payment structure mostly, which includes a shift from the price of charging evaluations to charging port bonuses. This is really just to encourage more, put more value on actual chargers getting installed. And then we've made a shift that we're only counting for the bonus customers that have received technical assistance. And again, this is $500,000 of funds. It's not net new cost. This is already included in our budget. And the action item for approval tonight is on that contract extension for 3 years, taking this contract up to a little over $2.5 million for technical assistance services in our EV Ready program. And happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Colleen or Megan.
Phil, thank you very much. Question for you. How
Yes.
are the customers owners of these multi-unit buildings finding out about the technical assistance being available?
So we're doing extensive outreach. We just did a mailer campaign over the summer, and we're devising a strategy for the next year to do even more outreach. A lot of folks are coming through referrals. ClearResult is also doing outreach to the properties in addition to the outreach that we're doing. And really critically now, a lot of residents are asking for charging, which is new over the last year. Before, we were having people put in charging for theoretical usage in the future, but now we're hearing from operators in multifamily housing that renters are skipping their properties because they don't have EV charging. And so there's now a demand side element to it as well.
Okay, so two other parts to the question. One example, in Brisbane, there are condo units that have grouped parking outside carports.
Yes.
And that has to go through an association, and that's presented some real obstacles. So how in fact can we identify those customers, these associations? I think that's an area that is worthy to pursue. And secondly, this 3-year contract extension, do we anticipate that with demand on this, that's adequate funds to meet what you anticipate the response being?
So to take your, thank you, Director, for the questions. To take those in reverse order, I do believe that this contract extension will cover. What this will allow us to do is more than double the volume of incoming customers, which would put us at a pretty good pace. Right now, we've provided over 200 site designs over the last 3 years, and our goal is to get to over 450 or so in the next couple of years. So we're really, we do plan on scaling up quite a bit, and this contract extension will allow us to do that. I do agree with your sentiment that condos do tend to be a particularly sticky spot for us. And in fact, we've been finding that rental apartments go much faster and do more charging than condo boards, which has advantages and disadvantages in terms of access and equity. We are doing a lot of outreach to condo boards. We have dozens or so that have gone through our technical assistance property, our offering. And we will certainly do a lot more and help them as much as we can. Our technical assistance does a pretty good job at giving the HOA boards an understanding of what they're making the investment in and then choosing what to go forward. And I'll add on there, as part of the technical assistance, we actually do offer several options. So the HOA board can kind of choose what's right for them at the time. Either a more conservative project, just meeting the needs of people who want it now, or more future-proofing options. That flexibility gives them options.
And it seems from the people I've spoken to who are under HOAs, the difficulty is you get a groundswell of owners who want this. But the association, the HOA board itself goes, oh, no, we don't have money, we don't need this. So it seems like the outreach we could do at those meetings is really critical to dispel that preconceived notion.
Yes, absolutely. And we have been attending some HOA meetings ourselves, actually.
Perfect, thank you.
And some of our cost reduction strategies have led some properties to install chargers at no cost because of the low cost options that we advise.
We'll start with Craig.
So thanks for your presentation. Do you have any utilization statistics on these chargers? I mean, you're putting them all in. Do you have a sense for if they're being used and how they're being used?
We will shortly. So as a condition for accepting the funding, folks have, they will be giving us data for usage on their EV chargers. What we're working on right now is setting up backend systems, working with the EV charging companies themselves versus the customers to minimize the level of effort that they would need to be involved in that.
Okay.
Working with the folks that have provided the most chargers in our program, which are ChargePoint and NLX. So we don't have it yet, but we will be getting that data shortly.
Okay, and then do you have goals in mind for, how you expect to see that utilization?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I have a target per se. For a lot of these sites, we're putting in much more charging than there's currently demand for. So they can just do a once and done kind of approach, knowing it will take several years for those chargers to be fully utilized. Last year, more than a third of new vehicle purchases were electric. So in San Mateo County. So I suspect they will be used soon, but we're not expecting all of them to be used right away.
Yeah, no, I was hoping you had some sort of model of, what you expected over the next few years. I mean, I realize, it's not a perfect way to look at it. At least you'd have some way of evaluating whether this was successful and sort of meeting the targets. And I totally understand what you're saying. In some cases, you're putting in more than you can possibly use in the first year or two. But the question is, after 3 or 4, did they start using, or did you just install a bunch of infrastructure that didn't get used at all? And that, I think, would be pretty interesting to see.
Agreed.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I noticed in the staff report, there was some mention of the broader Cal EVIP program having a lot of cancellations. And I was just curious if you had insight into what was causing those.
Yes, so initially, we were using another organization to administer that pool of funds associated with the Cal EVIP program. We've decided to directly administer our program, the funding for our program as a result of some of that stuff. So in short, I think we were having problems with the administrator. But also in that version of the program, they did a first come, first serve, and it was immediately sold out within, I think, 6 minutes or so, when we first did that round of funding in Cal EVIP. And a lot of those projects just never materialized. A lot of them seem to be projects that were maybe more aspirational than were a reality. And in our program, one of the things that we do is we really follow up with customers a lot in our program to really help them move along their project. And we try to determine when projects are possibly maybe more of a sales pitch than a real project. Our follow-up really helps solve that for our program that we administer. But yeah, those are some of the major reasons why there's a lot of cancellations. Yes, and also mentioned that in the middle of the contract. It did start right. No, they also launched in December of 2020, which was, thank you, early years of the pandemic. And a lot of the Cal EVIP charges were going towards workplaces and other public access sites, which did all not really pan out the way that we were anticipating in terms of work-based charging. And our program focuses a lot on multifamily, where people live.
Thank you. I was also curious about the shift in funding for this extension. I think the program, you mentioned an interest in trying to maximize benefit, and I think I understand with regard to increasing the funding for charging port bonuses and tying it to those who receive technical assistance. I was just curious if there was a similar direct correlation to reducing, I guess, maybe the share in performance charging evaluations, because it seems to me and I guess in particular this idea of a tiered system, because is there, have you noticed diminishing returns and after the first certain number of evaluations, or is it just more about taking some of that funding to put it where it would get more bang for the buck in this case?
Yeah, I think thank you for the question. It's more of the latter. So charging evaluations are certainly a key component of what Clearville is delivering. And the vast majority of people who receive a charging evaluation are moving on to the install phase. Most of those folks have not canceled, but most people move on. The shift is more into valuing chargers getting installed now. So for folks who went through technical assistance, received a charging evaluation, and have gone to install chargers, it's putting a little bit more value on that latter end of it. So projects that are going to go bigger are inherently a little bit more valuable, which aligns with the value of resources that we're investing into those sites.
Thank you. Could you maybe just explain a little bit of maybe the difference between a charging evaluation and offering technical assistance to a customer?
Charging evaluation is the deliverable that customers receive in technical assistance, but they receive a lot more than just that. So they're also getting a load study on their site, a virtual site walk, array of different options that factor in what they asked for, and then some more aspirational requests for them to shoot for and consider that brings down project costs on a net per port basis. But the charging evaluation is the PDF that they get that kind of wraps up all the findings that we've done in the technical assistance into one thing that they can take and discuss and figure out which project they're going to move forward.
Thank you very much.
I was wondering, for these chargers and multifamily units, who pays? Is it one where you pay, the individual person pays, or does the building itself? I'm just wondering, do their bills go up when they have all these people charging it?
That's a great question. In every case that we have helped folks install charging at their properties, property managers have opted for smart charging or smart outlets that have billing systems as a part of that charging system. So drivers would be paying a fee to use the chargers, and those fees are set by the property to recoup for the energy costs.
Oh,
So that's why they're so expensive. Got it. That's one of my questions too. How many EV1 versus EV2 chargers installed with it?
Oh, great question. Off the top of my head, I think it's probably about even. Where we've installed slightly more level 2 charging than level 1 charging. A lot of that being the 100 that went into the new garage in Redwood City.
Yeah.
But most of our projects these days are level 1 projects. So I would say it's about even. It's not a wide discrepancy.
So I'm curious, I mean, level 1 is relatively slow, though, you're right, overnight, it'll work. But, the difference between running a number 8 wire and number 12 wire, it's about 2 times more expensive, right? But I wonder, if you're running 100 feet or 200 feet or 300 feet of number 12, and if you, even on level 1s, just put in 8, so that they could then go to a 2 later.
Yeah.
Because the most costly piece, right, is the labor to run, well, the copper is expensive, but an 8 is expensive as a labor, right? So I wonder if it makes any sense to think about how, because I think that people are eventually gonna say, this level 1 stuff. I know Charles Stone, who used to be here, had a level 1 at home, and he was like, oh, I need to get a level 2. But my panel's not big enough. So anyway, that's just a suggestion. And then, quick question on, this is really interesting, sorry, I'm getting the detail, but so a 40 amp circuit can actually handle 4 level 2s.
Yes.
Right, but that's if you're doing the power management, right? Yes. So does that slow, because you're doing the power management, right, on 40 amp circuit, you don't want to overheat, does that slow the charge time?
It does. So what you do power management at these levels when you're expecting the vehicle to be parked for a long time.
Yeah.
And for a long time, we're talking about 12 hours, a typical park dwell time for a car at an overnight parking at where they live. So the goal for power management is to really have folks not notice that it's happening.
Yeah.
Because it's happening over a long time. It's if you weren't going to use power management, for example, you'd have one car plugged in for 12 hours, but only charging for 1 or 2 of those hours, and it's just sitting there all night with the plugged into it, not doing anything. So when they wake up in the morning, it will be a charge for a longer time, over more hours, but the goal is to have folks not notice that's happening.
So do the charging evaluations help folks understand that and the trade-offs between, let's say using, straight dedicated 40 amp circuits for a single circuit as opposed to 4 with power management? Are those some of the things that are explained to folks in the home evaluation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Most folks come to us with either no knowledge of EV charging or how it works, but they know they need to do it, or some knowledge of EV charging, but in the kind of traditional way. Each charger gets 7,000 watts of charging, but they don't really know why that's the case. They just know that that's what they are. And as part of our technical assistance, we do a lot of education with property owners and demonstrate how cost-effective strategies and low power strategies can do that, can really scale up. And there's many different types of charging. So that education is a key component of our technical assistance.
Yes, I'm feeling much more comfortable with the charging evaluation pricing you guys have, because if you are indeed delivering a product to folks that they can use to plan.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So it's great to hear about the momentum in the growth of the EV chargers and the new installations. How are we doing against our overall metrics in terms of reaching our installation goals?
So the goal is 3,500 by the end of next year. We're just at about 600 now, but our first few years were really foundation building. And now the momentum is really, really picking up. As I mentioned, we have a project that will be completed in the next couple of weeks. That's 3, 1 site. There's several more in the next month or so that are going to be a kind of similar size. But my goal for next year is to get to, on average, about 200 chargers per month, and is to scale it full.
that's great.
Thank you.
So, just really quick, first of all, have we done it in Los Banos?
We have one site in progress in Los Banos. We did some outreach out there. We certainly plan on doing more. And we have one workplace, site that's moving forward on workplace training.
Great. Paul, I hope we'll hear from you if you have ideas. It sounds like we can do some more there. And then the second is more of a comment. So we were in the resource management climate protection meeting this past week, and Bayran came in to talk about the comprehensive packaging of electrification rebates, and as everyone knows, it's really complicated for all of these, the jar programs, the chargers. So I asked our city to figure out who the Care and Fair, who the multifamily residential property owners were in our town. And our water district, or we do our own water billing, we were able to pull all those out. I think it's about 400 or 500 owners. So I'm gonna work on trying to figure out how to do an outreach into our program that we can prototype, so that all of you could take it to yours and figure out how to outreach to your, because sometimes I think when these go through the, you know, the associations, or they just kind of go out into the ether of nothingness, it gets really hard. But if you get a water bill that says, you know, we think we can save you this much money, and we can help you with this many rebates that are available, something specific. So I might like to see what you guys put together on your mailers. Maybe we can help facilitate it a little more on the ground. So if we can figure something out, we'll share it. If anyone has ideas, please let me know. We'll take it back to our resource management for the protection. Yeah.
Next time. Could you give us a little bit more detail as to what your outreach effort look like?
Sure.
County and Los Banos.
In Los Banos at the time, we were working with our former colleague who's no longer at PC, unfortunately. She was doing a lot of on the ground outreach out there at vendor fairs, at the Chamber of Commerce, I believe, doing in-person presentations. And so that garnered some support initially. We certainly plan on doing more outreach in Los Banos, especially once we have a new on the ground staff presence out there to help do more face-to-face meetings running our programs. I'm sorry, say that again? Oh, locally. So we've done a number of outbound email campaigns. We've done some outbound phone campaigns using resources like CoStar databases and to target certain customer segments. A few weeks ago, we did an outbound mailer to multifamily rental apartment sites. We mailed about 950 or so properties a few weeks ago and started getting some response from that. But we plan on doing much more aggressive marketing over the next year, looking at customer segmentation, figuring out unique messaging to certain customers, and doing a significant amount more outreach and marketing in the next year than we've done in the past.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, goodness.
Not a question, but so Housing Leadership Council does an annual conference, right? And so that is primarily for the affordable housing developers in the county. Having some sort of desk there or whatever, I think would be really helpful. Because the developers are always looking for ways to want to improve the service that they're providing folks. So it's a capital audience. And I think it's actually in October, this next one.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually see Eddie Stivers in 2 weeks let me know if you wanna, I can hook that on that.
That would be great. Thank you. And I should mention, we have about 12 affordable housing projects.
That's great.
Just one more thing, cities with reach goal have a lot of outreach to commercial properties. That might be a really easy way to identify potential sites and who the owners are.
Thank you. Okay, members of the public have any comments on this item? No hands raised, it looks like. Okay, fantastic. We'll need a motion to approve the contract extension, please.
So moved.
Okay, we have Tyler Jones with, making the motion with Carlos as the second.
Wait, what was the motion?
I think it's Tiger Jones
Got it.
and Carlos is the second. Sorry, Sam, we'll get you on the next one. Okay, we have a vote, roll call vote, please.
San Mateo County,
Yes.
San Mateo County, Atherton, Belmont, Brisbane. Burlingame.
Yes.
Colma,
Yes.
Daly City, East Palo Alto,
Yes.
Foster City,
Yes.
Half Moon Bay,
Yes.
Hillsborough,
Yes.
Los Banos, oh, Los Banos. Oh, sorry,
Yes, again.
thank you. Menlo Park,
Yes.
Millbrae,
Aye.
Pacifica,
Yes.
Portola Valley,
Yes.
Redwood City,
Yes.
San Bruno,
Yes.
San Carlos,
Yes.
San Mateo,
Yes.
South San Francisco, and with that,
Yes.
thank you so much, motion passes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Philip. Wonderful, wonderful. All right. Up next, item 6, update on PCE activities in the 23-24 legislative session. I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Thank you. First, Mark here, Mark Hirschman, Director of Government Affairs and Youth Directors and Community. Delighted to be here exactly 2 weeks after the conclusion of the 2023 California legislative session. So this is a time of reflection for some, to look back on what occurred during the past year. Although the year isn't over, the governor has 30 days from the end of last session, the last day of the session, to sign or veto bills. So a lot of newsworthy activities concerning the future of bills that were passed by the legislature still to come. But it's also a time to begin to look forward for next year. For instance, Cal CCA's legislative committee will start meeting in another 10 days or so, 12 days, to start looking at legislation for the coming year and what we might expect. So we thought this is an appropriate and good time to bring to you our lobbyist in Sacramento, our Mark Fenstermaker. Mark has been with Peninsula Clean Energy as our representative in Sacramento almost since the very beginning, 5 years, I believe, the anniversary coming up. And he is with Pacific Policy Group. Mark is the only lobbyist we've ever known, so it's been a very strong relationship over the years. His firm specializes in environmental, energy, water resources, natural resources, and particularly renewable energy issues. We really appreciate what Mark brings to our efforts, his knowledge, his relationships, the respect with which he's held in Sacramento, and in particular, the value of his insights. He understands the process and the lay of the land, and provides us with excellent advice and support for all the measures that the board wishes us to address in Sacramento. So I'd like to introduce Mark for a slide presentation, and then happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that very generous introduction, and thank you to the board and to Sean for having me here this evening. As Mark said, I'm Mark Fenstermaker with Pacific Policy Group. I have been your lobbyist in Sacramento for over 5 years now. It was August 2018 when I first came on board. And really appreciate the continued confidence in enabling me to represent you there in Sacramento. I very much appreciate the support. I just want to quickly say that the last time I was here, there's a lot of new faces for me on this board. The last time I was here was actually in late February of 2020. So a lifetime ago. A lot has obviously changed since the last time I had this opportunity. So I'm going to go to the first slide and talk a little bit about this slide and the next slide will be some themes here of this session. And one of the main themes this year was change, just a lot of change, starting with a number of new legislators. We had about a 25% turnover in both houses. A lot of that due to redistricting. The redistricting touched off legislators to decide to either run for different office or not come back. And so we had just incredible turnover and an incredible amount of brand new faces, really trying to get the lay of the land. And at a time everyone's returning back in person in Sacramento. At the end of session last August, is when I started to really go back into the hallways. This year, from the very get-go, it was kind of business as usual, pre-pandemic style. And so for a lot of legislators, new legislators, just trying to learn the ropes in a very fast-paced environment with everything in person. That change is going to continue. As you can see in the next bullet, the 2024 election cycle signifies the end of the very first round of legislators who were elected under the new rules. In 2012, the term length rules changed so that legislators could serve up to 12 years in the same house. And so we saw a big turnover in 2012. That class of legislators is about to term out in 2024. And so we're going to see roughly another 25% turnover as we go into 2025. Because of all of this turnover and because of legislators turning out, leadership transitions is an obvious next step. We finally saw the new Assembly Speaker, Robert Rivas, come into the speakership. This was announced by him last May. It took until November for him to finally actually get the caucus to officially say that he was going to be the next speaker. And then it took him all the way until July 1st to actually take the reins over from now former Speaker Anthony Rendon. Speaker Rivas made a couple of changes in terms of his leadership team, but beyond that, he made no changes to committee chairs, committee member makeup. And so with, like I said, 25% new legislators in the Assembly, we're going to see a lot of change come in 2024, presumably with committee chairs changing, members in new committees. And so that's just going to keep this change thing going. On the Senate side, where current pro tem Tony Atkins terms out next year, we have seen the election, or at least the decision of who the next pro tem will be, and that will be Senator Mike McGuire from the North Coast. And Senator McGuire terms out in 2026. So he's going to be a relative short timer. He's sort of a bridge between this outgoing class and the couple of new classes that started this year and into 2025. Senator McGuire and Assemblymember Rivas both have really strong CCAs in their districts, between MCE, Sonoma Clean Power, 3CE down on the Central Coast. So I think, you know, that's a good thing for CCAs, but of course, who comes in to be committee chair on the important committees like Assembly Utilities, Senate Energy, that'll also be really big factor in how legislation moves forward in the CCA space. Another big change this year was the budget. Very, very volatile budget times the last several years. 2022, unbelievable surplus, dollars flying out, new programs getting funded. And then this year, from the get-go, it was known that there was going to be a deficit. They finally landed in June at $31.5 billion. I'll talk a little bit more about the budget and its volatility a little later on. The last big item from this year, a lot of conversation around bonds. There is a number of proposals for climate resilience, water, energy for the first time that I've ever seen in a natural resources or water bond. There is the sections for energy funding. There are schools bonds, there are housing bonds. What we saw actually get passed and signed and is going to the March ballot is the mental health bond. This was Governor Newsom's top priority for the year, was to get a bond on the March primary ballot to try and effectuate his care court push with dollars behind it. It's just shy of $5 billion. So what stays the same? Well, one thing is change. Change is a constant. And because change is such a constant, one of the things that I know Mark and I talk about, we focus on, is the constant need to keep building new relationships. Looking at who's moving into which positions and making sure that we have the relationships and the ability to communicate with, whether it's new legislators representing your district, new committee consultants, new members of the committees that we care about, et cetera. We know that change is going to be a constant. Another constant is labor. They really pushed a lot of big initiatives this session, and they won on most of those initiatives. And in our space, the ones that most matter, there was a big push by the governor on reforming permitting and pushing infrastructure. A lot of that started with the various labor groups, the building trades, et cetera. In addition, and I'll get much more to this, was the big energy push legislation on central procurement. Labor was very much a factor in that as well. We see it, I see it in a lot of different policy conversations as it relates to climate change, as it relates to energy, and that doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. And then lastly, again, with change is this budget volatility, and what happens is that a lot of legislation, the ability for it to pass is tied to the health of the budget. And so in the good years, we see more legislation pass, and the bad years like we just had, we see less legislation pass as the governor and the administration are wary of taking on new costs and new PYs. Okay, so I just mentioned the central procurement entity legislation. It landed as AB 1373 by Assemblymember Garcia. He is the chair of the Assembly Utilities and Energy Committee. He also hails from Coachella, and the Salton Sea is in his district and is a big primary factor for what he does and a big primary factor for him taking on this bill. It did start out as a trailer bill proposal by the governor. So in the budget process, the governor and the administration are able to propose policy that ties into the budget. The budget had about $30 million proposed to the Department of Water Resources to be stood up as the central procurement entity. And that initial draft, that initial proposal from the administration had a number of issues for CCAs, including that it did not specify who the central procurement entity would be. There was an opening for the investor-owned utilities to play that role. It did not specify the types of resources that the central procurement entity could procure. It had some language that would allow the CPUC to enforce the IRP. And then it also had some burdensome RA penalty provisions where it would actually compound penalties if you fell short on your RA obligation. One of the key things that Mark and I lobbied on as it relates to our delegation, but that Cal CCA and all the CCAs lobbied on, was to get the proposal out of the budget. We needed to have it in a policy vehicle so that we could have a more transparent policy discussion and vote. When it's in the budget as a trailer bill, it really waits until the very end of the budget process before there's any real public discussion on it. So a big win early on was just to get it out of the budget and into AB 1373. The initial version of that mirrored a lot of what was in the trailer bill, so we came out in an opposed unless amended position. Again, we worked with our legislators and have to give a really big shout out to Senator Becker. He was very much involved, partly because of that initial budget proposal. He is the current chair of the Senate's budget subcommittee that oversees natural resources, climate change, and energy issues. But all of our legislators we met with, we talked with, made our pitch, and we know they were weighing in. As the bill moved forward, we were able to resolve the IRP issues and the RA penalty issues. And at that point, we were able to actually move to a neutral position. We continue to advocate for some further tightening around what DWR could procure. But we were in a comfortable enough spot to go to neutral. And then it wasn't until the beginning of September when we saw a final version emerge that was very closely aligned to where things ended at the beginning of the summer, that we were able to reaffirm our neutral position. And that's where we ended the session. Digging in a little bit more on what this bill does and how it may impact PCE. So the resources that DWR may procure in this function have some conditions on them, as you can see up on the screen. The administration did not want to commit that the CPE would only procure offshore wind or geothermal resources, particularly from the Salton Sea. But these conditions really hem in that that's where they're going to end up. You know, maybe there's resources down the road that aren't envisioned now that the CPE can procure. You know, what I see and talking with your regulatory team folks is, you know, should PCE consider procuring offshore wind either on its own or through CC Power? There is a new large market competitor. Same with geothermal. The good news is, I think that with these conditions, we're not gonna see them out procuring, your run-of-the-mill solar, so we don't have to worry about competition from DWR in that space. There were some provisions in the bill related to RA, as I mentioned earlier. We were able to clean that up pretty well. DWR, in addition to the CPE function, also runs a program for reliability reserve. And if an LSC is deficient on resource adequacy, they can tap into the reserve. DWR then assesses a capacity payment. The original language would assess the capacity payment and then assess a separate penalty. And the penalty and the capacity payment wouldn't speak to each other. Now they do. If the penalty is less than the capacity payment, the penalty is wiped out. If it's more, then the capacity payment reduces the penalty by the amount of that payment. And then lastly, this was a pretty long, complicated bill, so there's more, but I want to just provide some highlights, is that it does authorize LSCs to voluntarily obtain incremental resources from DWR, which could actually provide a benefit depending on what DWR is able to procure in offshore wind. If it's more cost effective, it could enable PCE to achieve higher levels of renewable energy at a more cost effective rate, hit goals higher than what the state is setting. All right, so switching over to the other big piece of legislation that occupied my time, Mark's time, is SB 537, which was a bill that PCE sponsored. And ironically enough, it's the first bill that PCE is sponsored, and it had nothing to do with energy. It had everything to do with the Brown Act, which I know you all are familiar with. There was legislation last year that was enacted that started to provide some flexibility for local governments, their boards, to meet virtually without some of the disclosure and access rules. We sought some additional flexibility. Through the process, we had a bill that would allow board members of multi-jurisdiction, cross-county bodies such as yourselves to have a board member who's residing more than 40 miles away from the meeting location to appear virtually without having to be actually accessible to the public. We had to take a lot of amendments throughout the process. There are some very strong feelings from the committee chairs that oversee this policy arena, from opposition such as the News Publishers Association and ACLU. And throughout that process and the amendments process, we saw some of our support lists start to fade away as the conditions created situations where entities may not be able to actually participate. It hurt our ability to keep a support coalition. And in the end, it hurt our ability to cultivate enough votes. So we actually made it all the way to the assembly floor. We started out in the Senate. This was essentially the last step of the process, but we could never actually confirm that we had the votes we needed to get it taken up for a vote. And the assembly leadership kept telling us that we had to have a hard vote count for the votes we needed before they would actually let us even try. The opposition really made a lot of members uncomfortable, both the organizations themselves and who they stand for, but also their messaging of the bill that was passed last year. It has a 2026 sunset, so there will be legislation assuredly in 2025 to extend that sunset. And so they kept making the point, we need to let AB 2449, this was the bill last year, we need to let that process play out. We need to evaluate it, and we need to work on this in between now and then, and really you should just wait until that sunset effort comes back around. By comparison, there were two bills that started out in the assembly also seeking Brown Act flexibility. They never got a committee hearing to begin with. So we got a lot farther than some of the other efforts this session, but at the end we fell just short. I just wanted to circle back around.
I can do a question real quick.
So what was the opposition opposing that? If they have.
In the end, their argument, their points were a fundamental opposition to further erosion of the Brown Act. You might remember from the committee hearing you came and
Yes.
testified at, that was their number one point.
Right.
We actually,
was next to me.
yeah, we actually worked with the opposition early on through the Senate Governance and Finance Committee and satisfied all the actual points they were opposed to in the bill, the pieces that they said this is a problem, this is a problem. For the last several months, it was just, we don't want to see another bill doing Brown Act reform right now.
Nice.
Yeah. Right.
My favorite, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to, it's funny. So, when we were at our hearing, and Senator Becker did a wonderful job, and, a lot of the Housing Coalition people were up there and they said, you've given us 7 bills to consider, this is a lot of bills and everything, and I wanted to say, you gave us 200 bills to consider for housing our way, and we managed to work through it. But it's just, there was a lot of bills, there were a lot of competing overlays, and it just seemed like they really just wanted to defer it for a couple of years. But I really appreciate the work you guys did, that your organization did and the staff did, and I think Marty testified, Andrews testified, and I testified. Really appreciate everybody going up there. It gives you a really good sense of the legislative process and what happens. I recommend anyone who's asked to go to Sacramento to testify. If you can fit it in your calendar, please do.
All right, I'll carry on. So back on the state budget, as I mentioned, 2 years of surplus, huge surplus last year, and we found ourselves in a deficit at $31.5 billion. The governor this session did a lot of cuts, deferrals, or shifts. It is part of what's creating a situation where we might see a climate resilience bond. He referenced that very early on in the session, that he thought a climate bond could take on some of these cuts. Just as an example of one of the programs and how it shook out with these cuts, the Equitable Building Decarbonization Program, which was just agreed to last year at over $900 million. $90 million was cut, $350 million that would have been in this year's budget was deferred to the out years. So, you know, they really tried to maneuver things around. The cuts and the shifting is going to continue to play out. You know, we expect that the budget may actually be in worse shape this year. The Legislative Analyst's Office projection was that the deficit was actually closer to $41 billion. And a lot of that is just based on the uncertainty with the tax filing extension that came down from the IRS due to the winter storms. The revenue projections have been really difficult for the legislature to determine, but their best guess was that it'd be closer to 41, but they didn't want to, I think, take on as many cuts this year. The budget outlook for next year is more deficit. I was reading just this morning, there's a report that right now, the Department of Finance is thinking it's going to be about $15 billion to start out with. You know, we'll see, maybe worse than that. And so that's really going to continue to impact everything that goes on in Sacramento next year. All right, so last slide, just starting to look at what's ahead. As Mark said, you know, the session is just 2 weeks behind us, but it's already time to start thinking about next year. I've referenced the climate bond quite a bit. It has to pass the legislature and be signed by the governor by June 27th. That coincides right along with when the budget passes, so we're going to see a strong conversation between the budget and the bond. Right now, there's a Senate proposal, there's an Assembly proposal. They're both coming in at about $15.5 billion, and they each have a $2 billion clean energy chapter. That chapter and all the conversations that I had over the session is still pretty uncertain and unsettled. So there's opportunity potentially to shape that next session if we think that would benefit PCE. All that said, I do anticipate that $15.5 billion to come down probably closer to 10 when we're all said and done. Maybe a little bit outside of PCE's normal policy sphere, but I did want to highlight that I think hydrogen policy is going to be a major part of our energy discussion next year. It was a topic this year, primarily about how it's produced. There's a lot of different viewpoints of what should be the feedstocks. From a very pro-climate approach would be to use electrolysis and split water molecules. that's gonna have a big impact on load if we start creating lots and lots of hydrogen using electrolysis. You know, the other part of the equation is how it's used. And, you know, what I saw from hydrogen proponents this year range from, of course, continued light duty vehicles. And there was a big conversation around our clean transportation funding and what should be the role of light duty hydrogen, but also medium and heavy duty. There were advocacy pushes for hydrogen to be used as a substitute for natural gas or in combination of natural gas, which coincides with or competes with building electrification efforts. So I think, you know, hydrogen is something that is worth paying attention to as we go through next session, and with a lot of funding from the federal government is going to continue to be a hot topic in the legislature. And then the last item on here, which is more close to home with PCE, would be the regional grid conversations. And there was legislation this year. It did not move forward. But in its place, there is now an effort being led by state regulators throughout the West. And in fact, there is a first meeting tomorrow to start talking through potential creation of an independent entity and what the scope and priorities would be of that entity. And from the materials I've seen, they're trying to stand that entity up by basically the beginning of next year. Depending on how fast they move, maybe we see legislation again next year if the entity feels like that's needed. But I think for now, the idea that California is going to promote legislation that pursues a regional grid on its own, short of this process, is not going to be part of the conversation. It's really going to be driven by this. And with that, let's take any questions.
Mark, can you tell the board which states are involved in that initiative?
Yeah, so it's Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, New Mexico.
Nevada?
I can't remember if Nevada might be in it too. I was looking over some of the comments that came in for tomorrow's meeting, and the one that caught my eye was a letter from Wyoming's Utilities Commission saying, thanks, but no thanks. We are not going to participate in this conversation at this time.
Could you repeat this?
Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, New Mexico,
Nevada.
and potentially Nevada. And with that, that's the conclusion of my presentation, and happy to take any questions.
Happy to open that up for board questions or comments. A lot. Yes.
I guess the only question I had on the Western state stuff, I mean, are there any restrictions on the kind of power they're going to generate, or it's just going to be a regional power distribution? So at the moment, the initiative is to set up a nonprofit independent body. And then from there, they'll start to address that question. It may be that they don't even create a regional transmission operator or TO, which has been the conversation so far. It may just be more of a new marketplace. The CAISO has recently launched what's called a day-ahead market, which, as I understand, has challenges facing it. And so this new body can help facilitate that better, or they could go all the way to a new RTO. It's really a big open-ended question. They're just trying to create a forum to facilitate public discussions amongst these states about, do they want to work together as a
Check. Nelly, you're watching mine anyway. I know, eyes behind my head. Are there any members of the public who want to make a comment or have a question? Mark? Don't see anyone? All right. I don't think there's no action item, it's just informational, or just informational report.
That's right.
Okay. Well, great. Well, Mark, thank you for coming up from Sacramento. Really appreciate it. Hope to get you on the road so you're not getting home too late. Anyone who goes up to Sacramento for work or conference, you've made yourself so obligingly available for us. Really appreciate it. Just let us know what work with Mark, and it's it's nice to sit down with them and have a moment, some time to learn what's going on and what they're up to. And with that, I think we're.
Can I clarify really quick?
Yeah.
You're right, Mark. So the states are California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, New Mexico, not Nevada.
Okay.
You're correct. Just want to make sure we didn't leave any out.
All right.
No
Good.
trouble.
Yeah, we got that clarification. Thank you. All right, with that, we're gonna go ahead and move on to item number 7, board member reports. If anyone has anything in particular, any events or work you're doing with electrification. So the only thing, I have one. So I was able to step into the Burlingame, the San Mateo Daily Journal hosted a senior day at Burlingame Community Center, where about 400 seniors came through. And they told me they're doing these, I think Foster City, Sam, is the next one. I think it's this month, October. So they're sort of moving around the cities and doing these senior outreach. And I just happened to kind of stumble upon it, but I just want to maybe suggest, Sean, that given there were literally 300-400 seniors coming through, you could buy a table. PCE could buy a table. We would get, I think you get 8 opportunities for advertising in the San Mateo Daily Journal for everyone you buy. So you could have an ad every week in the San Mateo Daily Journal. They weren't very expensive, but the number of seniors that stopped by, and given how many seniors have confusion around our programs and how to read their bills and who their energy provider is, and even opting out or not opting out, it might be a really good way to reach them on the ground and get an opportunity to put some advertising for us in San Mateo Daily Journal.
Marketing team, follow up.
Yeah, I have the names if anybody needs it. Great. So that was my only revelation. Anyone else? Okay, members of the public have any comments during this item? Look like it. All right, thank you for the item number 8, which is the industry acronyms and term. I think we should add Department of DPW in there. There's a couple today that we had that weren't in there, or look them up. There are yeah, we can add those in. Today would be nice, but it was great to have it, and I hope we can maybe just include it all the time, because for new people, it's really nice to quickly look down there and see what's available. If we have no other comments, we're gonna get out of here early tonight, and thank you very much, staff, and we'll see you guys on the. Thanks for coming, everybody.